Since being elected to this place in June, the issue of unaccompanied child refugees has actually been a major topic in my postbag and my inbox. I'm glad we have the opportunity to have this debate. I commend the Honourable Lady for South Cambridgeshire, who has already set the scene in Calais, which is clearly very bleak. Before going on to say a little about the Dublin regulations myself, I want to touch briefly on the Dubs Amendment and the British Government's woefully... Yes, I'd be glad.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. Would he agree with me that far from being a pull factor, by establishing a safe and legal route to those seeking asylum, the Dubs Amendment disrupts the traffickers who seek to profit from smuggling and exploiting these vulnerable children?
I thank my honourable friend from Criddigan for that intervention, and he's absolutely right. And I think one of the great misfortunes of this debate has been the government talks a lot about a pull factor, but has published absolutely no evidence on that. And it's very much the case that if you can't put up, then you must shut up. Before saying a bit more about the Dublin Conventions, I do want to touch on the government's woefully inadequate response to what has actually been the worst humanitarian crisis since World War II. To be clear, we in the Nationalist benches in this House would like to see the Dub scheme continued to enable the UK to receive at least 3,000 unaccompanied child refugees from Europe. Moreover, Madam Deputy Speaker, we want the British Government to increase the total number of refugees it intends to settle under the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Programme. Now, yesterday I had the pleasure of meeting with Sarah Kirby from the International Rescue Committee, who shared with me some very harrowing statistics and data about the number of unaccompanied and separated children in Europe. Europol reports that there are almost 90,000 lone refugee children in Europe, and indeed UNHCR estimates that in 2016 around 33,800 unaccompanied asylum-seeking children arrived in Greece, Italy, Bulgaria and Spain. The majority of these, some 26,000, arrived in Italy. Earlier this year it was announced that the UK Government had axed the Dubs Amendment to refugee children, capping it at 480. Madam Deputy Speaker, the refugee crisis has not gone away, and people are still fleeing the continued violence in Syria and other countries, which creates a very serious risk for increased numbers of unaccompanied children becoming prey for human traffickers. Her Majesty's Government needs to do its part by continuing to provide places under the Dub scheme when local authority capacity is available, as we know it is. I want at this stage to commend many of the local authorities in Scotland who have embraced with typically warm hospitality many refugees from Syria. My own city of Glasgow has been outstanding when it comes to welcoming what have now been effectively known as refugees. In fact, Scotland has welcomed over a quarter of the total number of Syrian refugees in the UK. I am very conscious of time, Madam Deputy Speaker, so before concluding my remarks, I would like to take this opportunity to just ask the Minister to respond to a few questions during the wind-up of the debate. Will Her Majesty's Government consider moving the date of entry to Europe to after 20th March 2016, if indeed there are still spaces available under the Dubs Amendment? And given that there are currently 2,590 unaccompanied children in Greece and over 13,000 in Italy, what assessment has been made of the UK's ability to accept more than the already agreed 480 children? Madam Deputy Speaker, sadly it did take a dead toddler to wash up on a beach and photos of them appearing on the front pages of our newspapers before most of us really sat up and took note of the stark horror of this humanitarian disaster. Those photos have now disappeared from our newspapers and the story has largely faded. No, I think we've heard enough of the Little Britain approach from the benches opposite today. The photos have now disappeared from our newspapers and the story has largely faded, but the humanitarian crisis rages on and this government can and must do more on this.
Hear, hear.